The spaceship landed with a loud thud, sending dust and debris flying into the air. Zara, the alien woman, adjusted herself in her seat. She gazed out of the window at the barren planet below. It was a hostile place, with jagged mountains and dark, stormy skies. The mission had been clear diplomacy with the inhabitants of the planet. But something about this place made her uneasy. The air felt thick, and the ground trembled beneath the ship's landing. "We've arrived," the captain of the alien crew said as he powered down the ship. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "Be careful. The planet's atmosphere isn't as welcoming as we thought." Zara nodded, feeling a tightness in her chest. She had always been proud of her species, but today, something felt off. She was the leader of this mission, the one chosen to represent her people. But the idea of stepping foot on a world so unknown, so dangerous, didn't sit well with her. The rest of the crew began unloading supplies and equipment, ready to begin their task. Zara stayed in her seat, her eyes scanning the small crew of humans standing by, also part of the mission. They were a strange presence among the aliens, their muscles large, their faces hard, but their eyes were kind. Zara didn't understand them. Humans weren't anything special, not compared to the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. But the humans had a certain ... strength, something unexplainable. A young human warrior, named Cole, approached her with a respectful bow. "Are you ready to step out, ma'am?" he asked politely, though his eyes held the same caution as the rest of the crew. Zara straightened herself. She had always carried an air of authority, and today was no different. "I'm ready," she said firmly, though her mind was racing. They all disembarked, and the cold air hit them immediately. Zara's heart raced as she took her first step onto the rocky ground. Her legs trembled. There was something in the air, unnatural feeling. It felt as if the planet itself was watching them. The rest of the crew continued walking ahead, their pace quickening as they made their way through the rough terrain. The planet's surface was jagged, with large rocks and uneven ground. As they continued forward, one of the alien crew members, an older officer, fell and twisted his ankle. His screams filled the air. Zara turned toward him, but before she could offer help, the officer stood, grimacing in pain, but insisting he could keep going. "I'll be fine," he said. But his voice was weak, and Zara could see the sweat dripping from his forehead. He was pushing himself too hard. The rocky ground beneath them was unforgiving. The alien officer's condition worsened. As they moved further into the storm, soon it became clear that they weren't just facing a physical struggle, but an emotional one. There was a sense of dread that hung in the air like an invisible force. Zara realized that the atmosphere was not the only thing that felt heavy her. People were anxious and tense. They weren't used to being in such a hostile environment. The storm grew fiercer, the wind howling louder. Zara's legs began to ache. A dull pain spread through her body as her breathing quickened. It was the first time she had felt this way weak, uncertain. She tried to keep up with the group, but her body was slowing down. Her legs weren't responding the way she wanted them to. She had been in physical training for years, but there was something about this terrain that drained her strength. "Zara, you need to move faster," shouted one of the crew members, but she didn't have the energy to respond. She could barely lift her foot to take the next step. Her legs trembled uncontrollably, and she stumbled forward. Just as she was about to fall, a strong hand reached out, steadying her. It was Cole. The human warrior had been walking behind her, and he now stood beside her, his presence unwavering. "I've got you," he said quietly, lifting her up gently. Zara stared at him, confused. He didn't ask for permission, didn't wait for her to tell him she needed help. He simply acted. His strong arms were the only thing holding her up now, and she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. She hadn't realized how much she needed it. "You're too slow," she muttered under her breath, embarrassed by the weakness she was feeling. Cole didn't respond, simply carried her, walking steadily through the storm. His movements were calm, controlled, despite the harsh winds and the uneven ground. Zara could feel the tension in her muscles start to relax as he moved forward, one step at a time. For the first time since they landed, Zara felt safe. The other members of the alien crew glanced back, their faces filled with disbelief. Couldn't understand why Cole, a human, would do such a thing. They were all trained soldiers, warriors capable of fighting alien predators. But here was a human, carrying the leader of their mission without hesitation. As Cole continued forward, Zara's mind wandered. She had always prided herself on her strength, but now she realized how vulnerable she had become. She was no longer the leader she thought she was. She was relying on someone else. Someone who wasn't even part of her species. And yet, as Cole carried her, she found herself strangely grateful. The storm raged on, but Cole didn't seem to mind. Kept moving, never once faltering. Zara's heart softened, and for the first time she allowed herself to close her eyes and rest. She felt the warmth of his arms around her. For the first time since they had landed on this hostile planet, she didn't feel so alone. As the storm raged on, the wind howled around them, but Cole's steady pace never wavered. Zara, still held in his arms, had stopped resisting. She couldn't help it. There was something about the way he moved, the way he carried her, that made her feel like she could finally breathe. For the first time in a long while, she felt like someone cared. The crew ahead was moving quickly. But Zara had stopped focusing on them. Her mind was on Cole. His strength was undeniable, but it was the gentleness in the way he held her that left her thinking. How could someone who had no reason to help her be so kind? She wasn't used to this kind of treatment. In her own world, showing weakness was considered a flaw. But here, in the human's arms, she felt something she had never felt before safe. "Thank you," she whispered, surprised by her own words. It wasn't like her to express gratitude. Zara had always been a proud leader, never showing weakness to those around her. For some reason, being with Cole made her feel different. She glanced up at him, but his focus remained ahead. He didn't acknowledge her thanks with words, but the slight nod he gave told her that he understood. "You're not as slow as you think," Cole finally said after a long silence. His voice was calm and steady, but there was an undeniable warmth in his tone. This world, it's not easy for anyone, not even the strongest. Zara didn't respond. She didn't know how to. She wasn't used to hearing such words from someone like him, someone she had once thought was inferior to her species. The human warrior had always been seen as less, weaker, compared to the advanced civilizations of her kind. But now, as he carried her through the storm, Zara could no longer ignore the truth. He was stronger than anyone she had ever known. The path was becoming more treacherous, and the winds were picking up. Zara could feel the cold air biting at her skin, but Cole didn't flinch. His body was a wall of strength and resolve, a living shield protecting her from the worst the planet had to offer. Zara shifted in his arms, trying to find a more comfortable position. Injury to her legs still left her with little feeling below the waist, but with Cole's support, she could finally rest. Her eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment, the world around her felt distant. The fear, the pain, and the worry seemed to fade into the background. All she could focus on was the warmth of Cole's body and the steady beat of his heart beneath her. "How do you do it?" she asked softly, her curiosity finally getting the better of her. "How do you stay so calm, even in the face of everything? You never seem to show fear." Cole's footsteps never faltered, but there was a brief pause in his response, as though he was choosing his words carefully. "We don't always have a choice," he said finally. "Fear is natural, but if we let it control us, it will break us. I've seen things, Zara, seen what happens when fear takes over. It destroys everything in its path. I'd rather focus on what I can do, not on what I can't." Zara was silent for a moment, thinking about his words. She had always been the one in control, the one who set the rules. But Cole's calmness made her question everything she thought she knew. In her world, power and control were the only things that mattered. But here, on this strange world, Cole's strength came from a place she couldn't understand. He didn't rely on his strength alone. He relied on his resolve, his heart, and his sense of duty. The realization hit her like a sudden shock. Humans were different. They were far from perfect. But they had something that many other species lacked. They didn't let fear consume them. Instead, They faced it head-on and moved forward, no matter the cost. "I've never met anyone like you before," Zara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not afraid of the unknown, of the dangers, of being weak. Keep going." Cole's gaze flickered down to her, and he smiled softly, though his eyes remained focused ahead. "That's because I know what it's like to be weak. I've been there. We all have." Zara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard stories of the hardships humans faced, but she had always dismissed them as exaggerated tales.
Ow.
To her, humans were just another species, no different from the others. But now, as Cole carried her through this dangerous world, she could see the truth. Humans had endured more than anyone could ever imagine. They had fought, struggled, and lost, but they never gave up. The silence stretched between them as they continued walking, and Zara found herself lost in thought. She couldn't remember the last time she had truly been able to relax. The weight of her position, her responsibilities, always kept her on edge. But here, in Cole's arms, she felt something different, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. A feeling of safety that wasn't just about physical protection. It was something deeper. As the storm began to die down, the rocky terrain started to level out. They had reached a small clearing, the first safe spot since landing. The harsh winds had faded into a soft breeze, and Zara could finally hear the sound of birds in the distance. It was peaceful, a welcome change from the chaos of the planet. Cole stopped for a moment to catch his breath.
Oh.
But Zara could see he wasn't tired. He was simply waiting for her. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, his gaze scanning her face with a concern she hadn't expected. Zara nodded, surprised at the tenderness in his voice. "I am now." With that, Cole carefully set her down. On a nearby rock, his arms lingered around her for a moment, as if giving her the chance to regain her balance. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she didn't see a soldier or a human warrior. She saw a person, someone who had risked everything to help her when no one else would. "Thank you," she said again, this time with more conviction. Cole smiled, though his expression remained humble. "I'll always be here, Zara." Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't alone. The weather had calmed, but the planet's harshness had not. The clearing where they rested was peaceful, but the journey ahead was still uncertain. Zara felt the wind against her skin, cool but not as bitter as before. She tried to steady herself. As she sat on the rock, her legs still numb from the injury. The truth was, she had no idea how much longer she could keep going. The road ahead was far from easy. As she looked around at the others, still recovering from the long trek, she realized how much she had changed. Before, she had always relied on her own strength, believing that no one could help her. But now, with Cole's steady presence by her side, she wasn't sure what to think anymore. He was just a human, yet he was capable of so much more than she had ever given him credit for. "You seem deep in thought," Cole said, his voice breaking through her contemplation. He was standing a few feet away, scanning the landscape, always alert. Zara turned to him, a little surprised. She hadn't even noticed him walking over. She had been too lost in her mind, trying to make sense of everything that had happened.
Just thinking,
she replied, her voice soft. About everything. This place. And how little I knew about humans. Cole smiled faintly. "I guess we're not so different, are we?" Zara didn't respond right away. She thought about the way he had carried her, the way he had fought the predator back when she couldn't even stand on her own. For the first time, she was starting to understand what he meant by not giving in to fear. Maybe they were both fighting something, each in their own way. "I've always thought of humans as weak," Zara admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "But now I see you. You've shown me that there's more to you than just what I've been told." Cole's eyes softened, seemed to understand what she was saying. "We're not perfect," he said quietly, "but we don't give up. That's what makes us strong." Zara nodded slowly, her thoughts swirling. She had always believed that the strongest were the ones who never showed weakness. But now, as she sat there beside him, she began to see. That real strength wasn't just about physical power, it was about heart, about fighting for something greater than yourself. As they continued to rest, the alien crew members began to gather their things, preparing for the next stage of their journey. Zara could see that some of them were still eyeing Cole with suspicion. They didn't understand why he was helping her. Why a human would bother with an alien who had no strength to offer in return. But it wasn't just about the strength they could see. Awa had learned that there was something deeper in Cole, something that no amount of training could teach. He wasn't just carrying her body, he was carrying her trust. The moment came sooner than they expected. The ground beneath them began to shake, and the sound of screeching claws filled the air. Zara's heart raced as she realized what was happening. The creatures from earlier had found them again. The predator that had attacked them in the storm was back, and this time there was no escape. "We need to move," Cole said, his voice firm. "Now." Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to stand, but her legs refused to cooperate. Her body was still too weak. She glanced at Cole, her thoughts a jumbled mess. She knew they had no time. They had to act fast, or they would all be caught. Without a word, Cole bent down and scooped her into his arms again. His grip was strong, but this time there was a sense of urgency in his movements. "Hold on," he said, his voice steady. "Despite the chaos around them, we're getting out of here." Zara held on tightly, fear creeping into her mind. The creature was getting closer, its shadow stretching across the ground. She could hear the sound of its claws scraping against the rocky surface, could feel the heat of its breath on the wind. But Cole didn't stop. He kept moving, his feet pounding the ground as they raced toward the safety of the trees. The others were ahead, running as fast as they could, but Zara saw the fear in their eyes. They weren't prepared for a fight. They weren't prepared for what was coming. She had to admit, even though her people were known for their strength, they were not trained for this kind of survival. The creature was relentless, faster than they had anticipated. It was getting closer. Zara could feel Cole's muscles working beneath her as he ran, his arms tightening around her. He wasn't just carrying her anymore. He was protecting her, putting his life on the line for someone who couldn't even stand. They reached the edge of the forest just as the creature lunged, sharp claws grazing the air behind them. Zara's heart skipped a beat. They'd barely escaped. "We're safe for now," Cole said, panting from the effort. He gently set Zara down on the ground, his eyes scanning the trees around them. The rest of the crew had made it as well, though they were visibly shaken. Zara felt the adrenaline leave her body as the danger passed. She was trembling, not just from the fear, but from something else. She had never been so vulnerable before, but Cole's calm presence steadied her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky. Cole looked at her, his expression soft. "We're in this together, Zara. We're not leaving anyone behind." For a moment, everything was silent, except for the distant rustling of the trees. Zara didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She could trust Cole more than she ever thought possible. The night had fallen quickly. The group of travelers had set up camp in the safety of a small valley, surrounded by tall trees that seemed to provide protection from the creatures lurking in the dark. The atmosphere was calm now, but Zara could feel the tension in the air. The predator had been a close call, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something more dangerous was still out there. Waiting as she sat by the campfire, the warmth from the flames did little to ease the unease. In her chest, Cole was sitting next to her, sharpening a knife, his expression focused but calm. His movements were slow and deliberate, as though he had done this countless times before. Zara noticed how relaxed he seemed, even after everything that had happened. He wasn't just strong in body, he was strong in mind as well. She couldn't help but admire him, though she still felt strange about being so dependent on him. She was an alien, a leader among her people, but now she relied on a human soldier to survive. "What's on your mind?" Cole's voice broke through her thoughts. He had noticed her staring at him, and his eyes met hers with an understanding. She wasn't used to. Zara hesitated. She wanted to ask him questions, to understand why he had helped her. But more than that, she wanted to know why the humans seemed to have such a different outlook on life. Why were they so willing to help, even when they had nothing to gain? I've been thinking, Zara started slowly, about what you said. Earlier, about not giving in to fear. I don't understand. How do you do it? Cole paused in his movements, the knife still in his hand. He set it down and turned to face her fully. Fear is something we all feel, Zara. It's what we do with it that matters. I thought fear was a weakness, Zara admitted. It's something I was taught to avoid, something I've always fought against. But you
Don't seem
afraid. You face everything without hesitation. Cole smiled, but it wasn't the smile of someone proud or boastful. It was a quiet, knowing smile. Fear is natural. We all feel it. But what separates us is how we handle it. I've faced plenty of battles in my life, seen things I'd rather forget. But I keep going. We all do. Zara looked at him, trying to understand his words. She had always believed in strength, in the power of control. But Cole was showing her something different. It wasn't about control. It was about something deeper, something stronger than any weapon or power. Before she could ask more, the alien crew members began to gather around the fire. They were talking quietly, their voices low. Zara's curiosity was piqued, and she tried to listen in. She could hear the tension in their voices, a growing unease that matched the feeling in her chest. Something's wrong, one of the crew members whispered. We should never have come here. This planet is cursed. Zara's attention sharpened. She looked at Cole, who was still sitting beside her, his face unreadable. She could see that he had heard the conversation too. What are they talking about? Zara asked quietly. They think this planet is cursed, Cole answered, his voice barely above a whisper. But I think there's more to it. Zara turned back to the crew. She could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty that had been growing since their arrival. They hadn't said anything about this before, but now it was clear. They were hiding something. I've heard rumors. Another crew member spoke up. Rumors about this planet, about the people who used to live here. They say they were wiped out, all of them, by a power greater than anything we've ever seen. Some even say it was an alien race, far more advanced than ours. We were sent here to gather information, but now I'm starting to wonder if we were meant to find something else. Zara's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The crew member hesitated, looking around nervously before continuing. Planet's history is ... complicated. There are stories about a race of beings who ruled this world long ago. They were powerful, but they vanished overnight. No one knows where they went or what happened to them. But some believe they left behind something dangerous. Zara's mind raced. She had heard of planets with dark histories, of civilizations that had fallen to unknown forces. But this was different. The fear in the crew members, the voice was real. The terror was evident in the way they spoke. Whatever was on this planet, it was more than just an ancient legend. It was real. What is it? Zara asked, her voice tense. I don't know, the crew member said, shaking his head. But I've heard enough to know that whatever it is, it's still here. And it's not something we should be messing with. Zara turned to Cole, her eyes wide. Do you think they're right? Is there something on this planet that could destroy us all? Cole didn't answer immediately. He was silent for a moment, his gaze locked on the fire as if searching for something in the flames. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but full of caution. I don't know what's on this planet, he said slowly, but I've learned one thing. No matter how big the danger, we face it together. We can't let fear control us. Keep moving forward, or we don't make it out alive. Zara nodded, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders. She had always thought she had the answers, but now she was realizing how much she didn't know. Fear was a powerful force, but it wasn't something she could let rule her anymore. Not if she was going to survive. Together, she whispered. Her voice filled with determination. Cole gave her a small smile. And she saw something in his eyes, a sense of resolve, a willingness to face whatever came next, no matter how impossible. It seemed the fire crackled between them, its warmth a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was still light. And Zara knew that as long as she had Cole by her side, she would face whatever was ahead, no matter how terrifying. The night stretched on, cold and silent, as the stars above twinkled eerily in the dark sky. The group had settled into uneasy rest after hearing the unsettling news about the planet's past. The air felt thicker than before, charged with something that made it hard to breathe. Even with the fire crackling beside them, the coldness in the hearts of the crew members couldn't be shaken. Exa sat near the edge of the camp, her mind swirling with thoughts. She couldn't stop thinking about what the crew member had said about the ancient, powerful race that had once ruled this planet were wiped out, but their legacy, or whatever remained, was still here. It was clear now. The danger wasn't just a myth. It was real, and it was only a matter of time before they encountered whatever force had caused the destruction of the past. Cole was sitting across from her, sharpening his knife again. He seemed to do this when he was thinking, his focus entirely. On the blade, Zara wondered what was going through his mind. He was the only one in the group who seemed unshaken by all of this. He had been calm during the Predator attack and the uneasy tension in the camp. She was starting to realize that there was more to Cole than just his physical strength. He had a resolve that seemed unbreakable, and Zara couldn't help but admire. "You're quiet tonight," Cole's voice broke through her thoughts. He wasn't looking at her, but he didn't need to. He could tell she was troubled. "Something on your mind?" Zara took a deep breath, trying to put her thoughts into words. "This planet, it's not what we thought it was."
Ow.
"What if we're walking into a trap?" Cole finally looked up at her, his expression unreadable. He set his knife down and leaned back, his eyes narrowing slightly as he considered her words. "I've faced situations like this before. We can't turn back. Now, we either deal with what's ahead or risk losing everything. Sometimes, you don't have the luxury of a choice." Zara turned her gaze to the fire, watching the flames dance. It was true, she realized. They couldn't just leave. Not with the truth of what was here. They had come too far. But there was something about this planet that gnawed at her. She had never felt so uncertain, so vulnerable. She had always prided herself on being strong, on knowing exactly what to do. But now she felt like she was walking in the dark. "The others are scared," Zara said softly. "They're afraid of what might be here, and I can't blame them. They don't know what we're dealing with, and neither do I." Cole nodded, understanding. Fear is natural, but it's how we use it that counts. We can't let it control us. You and I, we've both seen fear. It can paralyze you if you let it. Zara looked at him, her eyes searching his face for the truth in his words. "But you're not afraid?" "There's always fear," Cole said, his voice low. "But fear doesn't control me. I don't let it stop me from doing what's right." Zara felt a sense of clarity washing over her. Had been letting fear hold her back, keeping her from seeing the truth. But Cole had been right all along. It wasn't about avoiding fear. It was about facing it. The true strength wasn't in running away. It was in standing firm, in making a choice, no matter the danger. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approaching interrupted her thoughts. It was one of the alien crew members, the one who had spoken earlier about the planet's cursed history. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "We have to go," he said urgently, breathless from running. "We've found something." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "What have you found?" The crew member hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if checking for something. It's a structure. It's an old building, buried deep in the caves. We don't know what's inside, but we've been picking up strange signals. It's not from any technology we recognize. It's ... different. We have to investigate it." Zara exchanged a glance with Cole, her thoughts racing. This was at the moment she had been dreading. It's the moment when they would finally come face. To face with whatever lay hidden on this planet, they could no longer avoid the truth. "We're going," Cole said firmly, standing up. He reached down and helped Zara to her feet. His touch was gentle, but there was an unmistakable strength behind it. "Whatever's in there, we'll face it together." Zara took a deep breath. This was the choice she had to make. She could no longer stay on the sidelines, unable to act. She had to trust Cole, trust her own strength, trust that they could survive whatever awaited them. The crew gathered their things, preparing for the journey into the caves. Zara's heart raced with anticipation. This was a turning point. There was no turning back now. As they made their way to the caves, the air grew colder, and the ground beneath them became more uneven. The caves loomed ahead, dark and mysterious, their entrance hidden behind a veil of thick vines and moss. The sound of distant echoes bounced off the walls, making the place feel alive in a way that sent a shiver down Zara's spine. She could see the fear in the eyes of the others. But she also saw something else's determination. They were all in. This together, no matter the risk. Zara's grip tightened around the handle of her weapon, though she knew she wouldn't be using it unless absolutely necessary. It was clear now that this was not just about fighting the unknown. It was about survival, about making choices in the face of fear. Cole walked beside her, his presence comforting. "We're going to get through this," he said, his voice steady. "And no matter what happens, I'm not leaving your side." Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had always thought of herself as a leader, but now she understood that leadership wasn't just about strength. It was about making choices difficult, dangerous choices, and standing by them with each step they took into the cave. Zara felt the weight of her decision. This was her moment, and she was ready to face whatever was ahead. The cave entrance loomed ahead, a gaping mouth in the side of the mountain. Thick vines and moss hung from the dark opening, hiding the secrets within. The air was heavy, cold with an eerie stillness that seemed to settle over the group as they approached. Zara's heart raced with anticipation, her steps slow as she neared the entrance. Cole, walking beside her, didn't hesitate. He was always steady, his eyes focused ahead as though he had faced many dangers before and had never once faltered. Zara admired that about him. He wasn't just strong in body, he was strong in his mind, in his choices. "Stay close, Cole," said quietly, his voice low and firm. "Whatever is in there, we face it together." Zara nodded. No. She had made her choice, and now there was no turning back. The rest of the crew, though visibly shaken, followed behind them, their faces filled with a mix of fear and determination. They had all come this far, and now they were about to face whatever darkness awaited them in the heart of the cave. As they entered the cave, temperature dropped even further, and the air became thick with dust and the scent of damp earth. Zara could barely see her hand in front of her face, the darkness swallowing them whole. Cole had a flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows and revealing the rocky walls that seemed to close in on them. The sound of their footsteps echoed eerily off the stone, and the deeper they went, the more the silence grew. The tunnel stretched ahead, twisting and turning as though it had no end. The further they went, the less comfortable Zara felt. The darkness pressed in on her, making her feel smaller, more vulnerable. She had always been a leader, someone others looked up to, but now, in this endless dark, she felt like nothing. She glanced at Cole, who was walking confidently beside her, his presence unwavering. He didn't seem bothered by the darkness, not even a little. She envied his calm. "How do you do it?" Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole glanced at her, his flashlight casting shadows across his face. "Do what?" "Stay so calm," she said, "in all this darkness. I feel like it's swallowing me whole, but you don't seem afraid." Cole was silent for a moment, his eyes flicking ahead. "Fear is a part of me," he said softly, "but I don't let it take over. I've been through things that would scare most people, but I keep moving forward. The only way to survive is to face it." Zara listened closely to his words. She could see now that his calmness wasn't just something he showed on the outside. It was something that came from within him, something he had earned through experiences, through struggles. She had never truly understood that kind of strength before, but now she was starting to, as they walked deeper into the cave. The sound of the crew's footsteps began to fade, and the only noise was the soft drip of water from the ceiling, echoing through the tunnels. The walls were smooth and cold, and every turn they took seemed to lead them deeper into an endless maze of darkness. Then, suddenly, Zara's foot hit something. She stumbled, nearly losing her balance, but Cole's strong hand was there to catch. "Her, you all right?" he asked, steadying her with a firm grip. Zara nodded, a bit embarrassed. She wasn't used to feeling so unsteady, so dependent on others. "I'm fine, just wasn't expecting the ground to change." Cole didn't say anything more, but his hand stayed on her arm, reassuring her. She felt the warmth of his touch, and for a brief moment, she felt comforted in a way she had never felt before. Ahead, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber, the walls now covered with strange markings. Zara's breath caught in her throat. As she looked at the ancient symbols that lined the stone, these weren't like anything she'd ever seen before. They seemed to pulse with an energy of their own, glowing faintly in the darkness. "Is this... She whispered, stepping forward, her eyes wide with awe. "Is this the source of the signals?" Cole stepped up beside her, his flashlight sweeping. Over the markings could be... looks like something... old. The crew gathered around, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. The markings on the wall seemed to tell a story, one that none of them could understand. Zara reached out, her fingers lightly brushing the stone, feeling a strange warmth radiate from the symbols. She couldn't explain it, but the markings felt alive, as if they were calling to her, urging her to uncover their secrets. A low rumble shook the ground beneath them, and Zara's heart skipped a beat. The air seemed to vibrate with an unspoken energy. The markings on the walls began to glow brighter, their light pulsing like a heartbeat. "What's happening?" one of the crew members asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Cole replied, his tone serious. "But it's not good." Just then, the ground beneath their feet began to shift. Low grinding sound filled the air, and a section of the wall slowly began to open, revealing a hidden passage. The opening was large enough for the group to pass through, but the air that poured out from it was thick, cold, and unsettling. "This is it," Zara whispered, her voice filled with both fear and excitement. "This is what we've been searching for." Cole looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Zara hesitated. She had always prided herself on being in control, but now, for the first time, she wasn't sure. What was behind that door could be the key to understanding the planet's history, or it could be their doom. But in that moment, Zara realized that she had already made her choice. There was no turning back. The unknown awaited them, and whatever it was, they would face it together. With a deep breath, Zara nodded. "We go forward, together." Cole gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Together." And with that, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay beyond the dark passage.